yeah, I'll pass over to you, Shannen.
Great. Thanks, Billy, and thanks, Daniel, for the intro. It's really great to see MusicACT doing all these incredible things since I was last in the state, and it's very flourished. What I'll do, I will share my screen. Just let me know if it is worked for you.
Perfect.
It's good. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. It is lovely to see a few familiar faces in this chat as well. If you do have any questions, I know that Billy's going to be kind of like facilitating them questions, but I know that I'm going to be talking a lot. So if you do need me to slow down, please let me know. Also, if you do have any questions relating to any of the points that I put into the presentation, pop them in the chat, because I'd love for this to be as interactive and valuable to you as possible. So the more questions that you ask, the kind of like more information that you can get from it. I am currently presenting on NAM. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And yeah, so basically, welcome to Breaking Through the Noise. I'm Shannen Egan. As Daniel briefly mentioned, I used to be the program manager at MusicACT up until about late 2019. And since then, I've kind of just been continuing my music journey as an artist manager, a music servicer. I currently working for the Association of Artist Managers as well, which is a huge community full of Australian artist managers, and basically we offer professional development programs, and we have a team to advocate, and we have a membership kind of based community where we kind of, you know, liaison with the rest of the music industry. So it's a very valuable source if you are thinking about management or becoming a manager yourself. I would 100% recommend chatting to somebody at the AAM. So I've been managing probably for about 4 years now, and I've been doing kind of broader music servicing for about 18 months, maybe 2 years. During my time in Canberra, for those that don't know, I used to run kind of like a promotion and music publication called Canberra DIG, where I kind of engaged the kind of indie developing scene. So I've worked with a lot of people in the ACT, and yeah, thanks for having me back. But that's pretty much the go with me. And pretty much I do want to touch on that. I'm not really going to touch on COVID that much. So this is kind of like looking at a post-COVID or pre-COVID world, just because there is a lot more conversation to do with that adaptation, and it might come in some parts, but I just kind of like wanted to look at more of a bigger picture of this information. So this is kind of like what we're going to be going through today. The way that I've structured it is kind of like from the very beginning, and this is very kind of emphasizing building your team. So if you are an artist and you're wanting to build a team, this is what we're going to be addressing throughout the presentation. And then I've got some kind of like industry tea and some tips that we can go through at the end. And like I said, you know, if I am mentioning things that you're a bit unsure about, or if you want some elaboration on it, just pop a question in the chat and Billy will be able to read it out for you. I'm not sure if it's going to pop up for me because I'm sharing my screen, but we'll see. Cool. All right. So breaking through as a developing artist. So pop your answers into the chat, because everybody measures their own success differently. So as an artist, where do you think that the breakthrough point is? How do you personally measure success, and where does the value lie? So for example, a breakthrough point might be playing a major festival. It might be first radio play. It might be being able to pay, you know, your first month's rent. And that might look like your breakthrough point, but pop it in chat. Where do you think that your breakthrough point is? Have people put answers in the chat?
Nice. We've got playing an international festival, getting my songs recorded, getting played on Triple J.
Great. I mean, look, that's definitely what I expect. All right. Okay. I can see the chat now. This is great. And you look at playing an international festival, absolutely. Getting my songs recorded, very achievable. Getting played on Triple J seems to be a lot of artist breakthroughs at the moment. Recognized on the street. That's a very interesting one, especially like with Australian artists. Signing a publishing deal, which is great. You know, they're for the people who are really like prominent in songwriting. When my name brings people to gigs, I love that one. Collaborating with others is something I'm going to touch on a lot in this presentation. Actually having a concert, yeah, I feel you, we all feel you. Being able to afford a manager, that is a very interesting one. Again, I'll touch on that throughout the presentation, but maybe we can come to a solution with that. These are all great answers, and it's great that you've set your own goals as well, because it means that you have something to work towards. And then, you know, once you achieve that goal, you tick it off the list and then you work on to the next. So before you do anything, I'm thinking more at this moment, like once you have a song, you really need to set yourself them goals and be realistic about how much time you can put into your music project. Because I know a lot of people, especially emerging artists, they're not setting their goal for a music career, which obviously means that the time and effort that you put into it might be a bit different to somebody who is working on music full time. You know, I think before building a team, you need to ask yourself the question, like, are you going to be putting as much effort into your project as much as you expect everybody else around you to? And I think it's, you know, have a good think about that, and then you can meet your own expectations and others can meet your expectations too. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to kind of like start from the very beginning when it comes to collaboration, building a team. So at the end of the day, it's always going to come down to the music or the song that you want to release. You know, there's a lot that goes into marketing and there goes a lot into the team, but you know, your version of a good song might be different to someone else. So you've got to really keep pushing that and make sure that you're creating the best music that you can. And think about the way that you want to collaborate as well. So if you're an independent writer and you write a bit more isolated, and if that works for you, then you kind of know what you're wanting to achieve. But maybe you're open to co-writes and working with producers, like whether they're producers in your community or whether they're producers in Australia or around the world. Like you know what is going to work best for you as a songwriter. A lot of people ask me all the time, like, well, I want to work with producers and I want to work with songwriters, but like I don't know how to contact them, or you know, they're only working with people who have management and publishers and labels, and that is true to an extent, but contacting more established producers and writers, it can be intimidating. But their inboxes are normally quite open to emerging writers trying to break through, because, you know, these producers want to co-write a song that they are a part of. Like, they want to split that song. They want to be at the start of a career of an artist that's going to blow up, you know? Like, we see producers all the time who work with these big Australian or international acts, and you'll see that they've actually started working with them at day one. And I find that a lot of producers have a lot of faith in developing artists. So definitely keep that in mind. Look at the artists that you aspire your sound to be like and get in contact. You know, most producers and writers have their own websites with contact information. You'll be able to get through to their management teams if they have a management team via their contact portals. But another really good thing for building any contact list is going on Instagram, and where you see the little email button when you're on a professional profile. If you click that, it will come up with their contact email. So if you're trying to get in contact with a producer and they've got a professional Instagram set up, you can actually have that direct line of communication. Obviously, just have a think about the way that you want to pitch this song, like whether it's just kind of like a bounce or the bare bones of a song. Have a good idea of what you want from them before, you know, you start just throwing music at them, and start that conversation. Okay, cool. Is there any questions?
Yep, we actually have one quick one from DJ Gosper. In the last, just in relation to the last thing you just said, yeah. Does this work if you're old and emerged?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, it might even work in your favor if you have the contacts and networks already. You know, we've seen this conversation being had over the past few months about age and where you are as an emerging artist. And if the producer wants to work with your music, I can't see why they would say no. I guess that's obviously up to you to do your research and see if the producer's the right producer for you as well. I know it can be like very easy to kind of look at the, you know, the up and coming producers that are working with Triple J artists, but, you know, maybe look at the ones who aren't in that circle. And yeah, no networks, contacts, producers. I'll get into this in a moment. It's kind of just about building your own contacts lists. So I'm going to go back to, all right, imagine, cool, you've got a co-writing production session set up. When you do this, I'm just going to touch on this very briefly because it feels a bit irrelevant to the presentation, but I just really wanted to say it. Make sure you talk song splits prior to your sessions. Some writers and producers will set their own point and split system. I can't go into too much detail about what that means if you're not aware. Maybe give it a Google. There's a few resources online, which I'll try and find after this, but just make sure that you have something set up either in writing or something agreed between you, because I have noticed that a lot of people that go into co-writing sessions with other collaborators or producers, especially when they've got management teams, it can get a bit messy, especially if a song blows up. So please have the conversation with a producer and co-writer. Also, when you go into these sessions, have realistic expectations. You're not always going to get a song out of it. There won't always be 100% success rate, but just kind of take the experience that you've had with the writer or producer and take it to the next one. And then it kind of adds to your creative process, you know. Just because one session didn't work out doesn't mean that the next isn't going to. Cool. Finding value in things that aren't 100% success will keep you optimistic on your music journey. I know it's really hard, you know, to keep doing these things, especially when you're writing, but all I can really encourage you to do is just keep doing it. Speak to your peers about it as well. Like it is a very hard industry to kind of, you know, really indulge yourself in, because there is a lot of rejection and setback. But I guess I'm just going to put this optimism in there and just be like, think as one fail as something that you can add, you know, to the next thing that you're going to do and how you're going to do it differently. Cool. So you've got a song, you're feeling confident, you think you're ready for a team, you know, you don't want to do this, you don't want to be self-managed anymore, and you're looking at building kind of like a campaign around you, and these people are going to service your music. So I'm going to go into a little bit about management and project management. I think do some research. I know that it kind of seems obvious that you're going to get a manager and, you know, it's all up to them and they're going to make or break you, but have a really clear understanding of what a manager does and their responsibilities. Also, managers work very differently from one another. So one manager might work in one way and another might work in the other. Like no one manager is the same. And also ask yourself the question, like, why do I need a manager? Like, why do I need a manager? Like, if you're looking for a manager, make a big list of things that you actually want them to do for you. Because I know that I've worked with people, or I've seen people in the industry that they just want a manager so that they say that they have one, and they're not actually taking into account what they can do for them. So I guess keeping that in mind. But I've got some tips of how maybe you can go and find one. Ask around, go to your peak body rep. Somebody like Billy is a really good resource. Other industry professionals around you, other musicians who have management. One tip would probably don't go to a manager that already represents a similar artist to you, just because you don't want two of the same artists, and you don't want to be competing on anybody's roster as well. And I think that a lot of people will make that mistake, is that they'll go off and find a manager and just be like, oh, well, they manage so-and-so who makes similar music than me, and the response will be like, I'm not looking of taking anybody on like this at the moment. So that kind of like comes into approach of a versatile manager that's wanting to explore styles and genres. I found that people who are kind of wanting to navigate out of the style and genre that they work in is actually like very passionate, because it's like starting on a new project, and a good manager is quite an entrepreneurial one as well. And you might be like, well, I want a career manager, so I want the same manager as Paul Kelly and this and that. But just because somebody's been in the industry for 15 years doesn't mean that they're going to be the best match for you. And this is something that I really, really feel passionately about, is that young managers are incredible to work with, because they're new, they're passionate, they want to get to know the industry, they want to make as many contacts and networks as possible. It's fun, it's exciting when you're a young manager. So maybe having somebody behind you like that could actually be quite beneficial to add to your team. And specifically in Canberra as well, because Canberra can be quite isolated when it comes to the overall national industry. And I think kind of like the reasons why it is because there aren't many managers, there's not many publicists, so yeah, it can feel kind of like isolating in that sense that you're not able to find anyone. And something that I would really like to see, of the Canberra music community is, if you think that maybe a friend who's really passionate about music might be a good manager, talk to them. If it's something on your mind, being like, I could be a manager, do it for 1 hour a week, like kind of dip your toes in, because everybody kind of gets really fired up by each other in a music community, and it would be great to kind of like see the Canberra music community flourish with a bit of an industry behind it. Is there any questions? Sorry.
We do have a couple, but I might leave some of these to the end, because I think you'll probably end up covering a lot of this stuff as you're going.
I might just D-dub, contractual obligations and management. Have heard horror stories of artists being badly exploited. How do you protect yourself? Okay, this is very like, there is a textbook. I wouldn't recommend making any other negotiations in this one. A manager gets 20% commission, net or gross, that's in your negotiation depending on the income stream. But you should be doing around 20% commission, and you should have a up to 10-year sunset clause. I won't go into the sunset clause at the moment, but keep the word in mind. So yeah, 20%, contract it. I think, and this is something that I will address a bit more when we talk about labels, if you want a manager, you're going to have to be prepared to pay for legal fees. Legal fees aren't that much when it comes to a manager contract. But if there are people kind of like in your network as well that can go over them contracts, pretty much most agreements are just like copies of other agreements, like copy on copy.
Yeah.
So yeah, just get somebody to read through it if you really can't afford the legal fees. But yeah, nobody should be charging you more than 20% on gross. That'll answer that question? Yes. Cool. So I'm going to go on to distro companies. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know that you've had quite a lot of distro workshops in the past, but I kind of just wanted to do a quick run through of what they actually do. A lot of people think that they are kind of like the thing in between to get you on Spotify editorial. What they're actually there to do, unless you have a written agreement with them, is to make sure that you have all your bits and pieces ready for a release and to pitch properly to Spotify, which you do it all yourself on your platform. It's just like your distro company does it for you to make sure that, you know, you've got your artwork, you've got the lyrics, you've got the kind of like exclusivities on global distro and whatnot. And then when you do sign your written agreements, and again, this is just like any music servicer, if they like your song and you pitch your song to them, then they will pitch it for you to playlisting. So what that means, again, it's through your portal, which you can do yourself, but they will pitch editorial and third-party playlists. So basically, the relationships that they have with DSPs, it's probably a little bit more than you would have as an independent artist, unless, of course, you do have like a relationship with a music director at Spotify or Apple or YouTube. But yeah, I mean, the value can be worth it. I think it's just really dependent on the campaign. And normally with a written agreement with distro, they'll take about 10 to 20% commission on income streaming, which, you know, that could be a lot to some people. Or they'll just do a set fee of maybe $200 to $1,000. And the reason why I say it goes up to $1,000 is because there's certain music services at the moment that are actually offering third-party playlist pitching. So it means the ones that aren't directly editorial from Spotify and Apple, but, you know, these huge, massive viral playlists that are kind of like content creators. So there are some services like that that actually might be a bit more valuable to you, especially if you're in a bit more of a niche category. But yeah, you know, DSPs are your Spotify, your Apple, your YouTube, your Deezer, your Amazon Music. Cool. Is there any questions on distro before I move on? Yeah, digital server, I can't say that properly, a bit of a tongue twister. Digital service providers, yeah, which is, you know, Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Amazon Music, YouTube. Cool. Cool. So you've got that, you've sorted your distro out. Maybe you've got somebody helping you out in project management or in management, and you're wanting somebody to service or maybe do some PR. What is your main focus out of your release? Do you want playlist ads on DSPs? Do you want radio play on commercial radio or Triple J or Double J or community radio? Was that a question? Sorry.
I think you're good. I think someone just had unmuted their thing.
Cool.
Please keep going.
Do you want online media support? Like, do you want Rolling Stone to feature you and NME or Rock Sound or Kerrang or whatever it is? Or are you wanting business partnerships? Like, do you want to feature in an Adidas campaign or Vans or even just small local business? Have a really good think about what you want out of your release, and then you can start thinking about the people that you want to service it. And when you're thinking of a good servicer, think about, does your servicer have a good reputation? And what I mean by that is, will people respect their opinion and taste? Because essentially services and publicists are tastemakers. Like, radio and these platforms are depending on you know, the quality of things that they're bringing through. Are they a right match for you? You know, if you're an EDM performer, you're not wanting to go with somebody who predominantly services pop punk. Definitely talk to your publicist about their contacts, because in the style and the genre that they might be experts in, like, it's going to benefit you if you go with somebody like that. Also, these services are going to offer you different kinds of things that they can put into a campaign, and these can be anywhere from a full publicity campaign, which involves everything above that's listed in the bullet points. Distro, so they actually might act as a distribution company. Project management, which is like a bit of PR and management, so they kind of pitch to the wider industry. Just radio pitching, they might just do a full radio service, and you can do a small of a service like bio writing. So you might just need a hand, you know, redoing your structure for your press releases. I think this issue can be run into a lot, is a lot of people do expect people to service their music for free. If you're wanting to go with somebody with experience and you're actually wanting, you know, some decent results, you got to pay for the service. You know, campaigns can last anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 years. You know, you could do 3 weeks on a single campaign. It could be something that's shorter because you're like taking away the online media and partnerships. And the 3 years could be a world tour, and they, you know, might promote the world tour as well. If you're looking at figures as well, single campaigns can range from, with an experienced servicer, from about $500 to $3,000. It really depends on who you go to. And an EP and an album campaign can, again, anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000. Yeah, so, you know, you got to be prepared, because, you know, some of these people are doing 6 weeks of work, 2 months of work, a year of work. So it's kind of just putting all them hours together so that they can keep stretching out a campaign. Do we have any questions on servicing? No. Cool. All right. I will move on. Nope. Record labels. And I just put the question marks in there. I'm very, like, where I stand with labels is that I think that you can do a lot without a label. And I think that these are the really, really important questions that you should be asking yourself when it comes to a record deal. So what do I need from a label? Do I need money? Do I need an advance? Do I need their networks? Do I need their connections? Do I need their in-house team? Do you actually know anything about their in-house team? How much do you know about record deals? Have you done your research to make sure that you know exactly where you are and with your contracts? And are you prepared to pay a lawyer so that they can do that and make sure that you're the best way represented, so you're not coming too much at a loss? Really, really think of the benefits for you, because you have to be ready to sign a contract. You have to be sure of this. Because, you know, as it's that kind of stereotype that record deals are pretty hard to get out of. And, you know, if you've already built this team of a manager or even a distro and a publisher and servicer, like, maybe these little pockets of different companies are actually giving you everything that you need without signing away, you know, 80% of your royalties. And here are some unsigned and self-managed artists. Spacey Jane, which is a big upcoming indie guitar band. Cub Sport, a kind of pop band. And Fanny Loopston, which is kind of singer-songwriter. These are kind of, you know, the kind of bigger self-managed artists in Australia at the moment. And I'm going to go into publishing deals. Publishing deals is like a really big conversation, but these are kind of like the bare bones of it. You know, if you Google it, this is what comes up with. Music publishing is the business of promotion of monetization of musical compositions. So music deals are normally targeted at individual songwriters and producers. So not normally do like bands or kind of like duos or whatever sign a publishing deal. It will be like specific songwriters. So for example, more likely that the lead singer or the writer in the band will get the deal. And then you kind of like negotiate depending, you know, if your publisher's giving you money or not, of where that money is going to go, and how you're going to collaborate. And I guess, like, you know, the advantages of getting a publisher is money. So the advances a lot like a record label, the networks to set up co-write sessions. So, you know, if you want to write with Ballpark Music and they're on the same publishing roster as you, then they might send you up to Brisbane and you go write a song with Ballpark Music, and it's a really good advantage. And obviously, you know, where the kind of publishing sync and royalties coming is sync for film and TV. A lot of people who do, you know, write in music and currently writing contemporary music end up writing for film and TV because they make more money doing it, and it's a bit more versatile in style as well. Tips on how to get a publisher: look at rosters and artists in a similar style and genre. So let's say you're watching Home and Away and you hear a song from one of your artists, you could probably give them a Google and just put publishing, and you'll find it on Google which publisher they're in for. And they normally have a submission button on their website if you wanted to submit music, or, you know, if you're building your contact list, they are A&R representatives at publishing. Huge one, tips on how to get a publisher: just write heaps, just write so many songs and co-write. So co-writing is super important, because if you have the skills to write with other people, it can really give you a leg up, because, you know, you're a lot more prone to collaborate, and publishers really like that. And, you know, some of the most reputable publishers in Australia at the moment: Native Tongue, Mushroom Publishing, Sony. Most of the major labels kind of have like their own sub kind of publisher, and, you know, BMG is a big one in Australia as well. I think I've got a question. Are you able to recommend companies we can use for servicing? Oh, okay, cool. So it's about the servicing. Maybe I'll come back to that at the end. Is that okay? Recording. All right. So any questions on publishing? I know that I'm kind of probably like rushing into it and just like saying a lot.
Just had a great question from Ruth.
Great. Well, you could submit a demo. You know, the A&R people, they know the bare bones of a good song and the potential of a good song. And they're quite, you know, used to listening to demos. Like that's what they're there for. I mean, it depends on your own standards as well. Like if you want to do, you like send in a mix or whatever, but yeah, I think it really depends on the song, but they are used to getting demos. All right, what's the tea? So I'm going to ask, does everybody know what's going on with DSPs? And again, this is only Triple J focused. But does anybody know what's going on between, I keep writing on the presentation as well. No. Hey, Billy, could you let me know what's going on between Triple J and Spotify at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I can give you a little bit of a heads up on that. My understanding of it is that there's a bit of a bungle between Triple J and Spotify in relation to who gets priority of new releases. And so understandably, Spotify put a lot of resources into promoting emerging and developing artists through playlisting, through advertising. You know, if you preference Spotify, you might get a billboard in Times Square. You know, that's the kind of advantage that they bring. They're a little bit upset with Triple J because of the way that they operate their Premiere system. So the problem for Spotify is that Triple J is getting access to Premieres ahead of Spotify. And so Spotify is having this clash with Triple J over who gets access to those. The first listen to songs. That has led Triple J to effectively abandon Premieres in favor of what they're calling first plays now, which means that you won't need to give Triple J exclusive access to the song ahead of its release in order to get one spin. Is that a fair kind of description of what's going on, Shannen? I'm sure you can add a lot more nuance to that.
That's great. Yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. There's just some exclusivity issues at the moment of, you know, where it's getting played first. So pretty much Spotify wants, as soon as it gets radio play, Spotify want it uploaded, and they want you to kind of delegate between your distro service as well to make sure that the songs are up at the same time. It is very frustrating, especially right now when we can't tour. There's not much live music going on at the moment, and we have a lack of platforms already, and you know, for people who kind of fill that space, it kind of feels like you had to choose one or the other. But maybe you're also not a Triple J artist as well, and it just means that you can focus all your attention to Spotify, and you can put all your resourcing into that. But yeah, it's just something that's going on at the moment that some people should be made aware of, that if you are getting a premiere on the platform, you really do need to delegate with whoever's handling your campaign and distro.
Most people that, if you're working with someone external to like your usual team, or working with someone that works a lot in the industry, they'll probably know about this. And even, at least in my recent experience, Triple J are kind of shying away from offering premieres even when you ask for them anyway. They'll, at least in my experience, they'll always offer something after the release or something close to the release, just to avoid that whole problem anyway. But definitely really good to know about for all musicians.
And remember as well, like, it's pretty rare that you get a team that doesn't want your release to be as successful as possible, because it's not a very good reflection on them either. So, you know, people are normally quite open with communication with these things. But yeah, that's pretty much the tea on that. Second bit of tea, I wouldn't really say this is tea, but it was just more of like a tip from somebody who I was trying to at Spotify, is to make sure to set your territories depending what DSP you want to use. So, for example, the most used platform in Australia is Spotify, but then in the UK it's Amazon, and in France it's Deezer. So kind of do some research into territory and where people are listening from and where you want to target that. And then you can set yourself little mini goals as well. And it means that you're not kind of like focusing just on one and just spreading it out a bit more. Cool. And then music media, what's the value? I guess this kind of comes to a servicing kind of point, is we've seen a lot of blogs and music media kind of tire out. I know that it was a lot of main focus for campaigns at the moment. And look, if you want to see more music media online, support them, advocate for them, start your own blogs, talk about music more online. But at the moment, we're kind of seeing a big decrease, especially with editors stepping away from publications as well. So yeah, that's something that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit. You know, the industry as a whole during COVID, I think there's a lack of motivation, and I'm sure we're all absolutely sick and tired of hearing the word fatigued. Yes, we're all very fatigued. But I guess the way to keep on supporting it is through advocacy, wearing your voice, don't give up, keep releasing music. I know it's really hard at the moment if you do depend on touring, but yeah, I mean, there's like, could talk about it's like a full hour of how to engage your audience online. But you know, there's so much that goes into it. But yeah, don't stop releasing music. We still need new music, and we need new music more than ever. So that's probably something that, you know, is lacking at the moment. Cool. Who do we think is the most valuable team member? It's you. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's your music project, and you should always try and keep a hold of what control you have for as long as you can. I'm just seeing so many artists at the moment signing away on premature deals and throwing away cash to majors and bigger established company without much return. And it's pretty hard as a developing artist, you know, when you kind of got to saviour what you've got. I guess all I can say is do as much research as possible. Really make sure that somebody's the best fit for you. Chat to other artists around you who've worked with specific music companies that either hit you up or you're hitting up. I remember I put accessibility here, and I can't remember why I put accessibility here. Billy, do you remember?
I don't remember what that was, but that's okay. I think let's keep moving through it.
Okay, cool. Well, just
I think it was a point about that you are the only person, like all of these other people are very accessible.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, like really, when I mean research, like get access to people's contacts because they're there, they're online. You just have to research yourself into it. Like I've built myself a huge music industry contacts list, and like I got them all myself by doing a lot of research.
Yeah.
Cool.
Those things don't necessarily just come to you. Like you do have to go out and get them.
Yeah.
They are easy to get. So that's the good news.
Yeah, there's a reason why there isn't like a full directory, you know, available online just for people to pick up. Yeah, so you got to build a music industry contact list. Another big tip would be engage with other artists online, because that's the only way that we're able to engage at the moment instead of touring. So I always, as a manager, I tell my artists all the time to, you know, hit up the people that you want to tour with or collaborate with or comment on their content, because it actually helps them and it supports them. Like engagement is, you know, attention to the art. So I always find that that's really helpful. I know this is a bit controversial putting in at the moment, but tour. Especially around Canberra, look, you've got Wollongong, you've got Sydney, you've got the South Coast, you've got Newcastle, and you've got Albury, at least within driving distance. And don't wait for somebody to contact you to play a show. If you want to play your own headline, find a venue somewhere that is giving, you know, a good venue deal, and, you know, use that initiative to tour yourself. Because I know it's really easy just to keep playing in Canberra and then waiting for people to come to Canberra to ask you to play with them. I can't stress enough how much you should be using your initiative to book your own tours. Or, you know, if you think that somebody's got a good skill set and you think that they could help you book a tour, ask them. Because, you know, you want to get this touring experience behind you, and maybe you might play in Wollongong and then somebody asks you to play in Sydney, and then somebody asks you to play in Melbourne, and then you're playing all the capital cities and all the regional places in between as well. Apply for arts grants and build your skill set. And when I mean skill set, I mean your writing skill set. I know we all hate it. I don't like grant writing either, but I have to do it. There are grant writers that you can hire as well, like as grant writers. And they normally have like sometimes a success kind of fee. I think most grant writers take about 10 to 15% commission on gross of the grant. Excuse me. But yeah, I think just like applying for grants while you can, because there's so many at the moment, and just keep doing it. And then that way you'll start to build your own little template and the way you can just kind of like change up information as well, kind of depending on the body that you're applying for. I think this is super important. And it's the way that I kind of built my music career as well, is that I always kept in communication with local state peak bodies. Even when I moved to Melbourne, I was going to every single VMDO program, everything that Music Victoria was doing. I was engaging with the push and doing things with the push. Like they're there to bring communities together and to get, give them a bit of a an insight to what's going on around them. Like you don't want to be isolated in that sense, and these state peak bodies are there to be contacted. Obviously, don't like start sending them music and it's been like, can you pitch my song, because that's what they're there for. They're not services, but they're supporters. Again, same as above, build a music media and radio contact list. So that's like music directors, submission emails for online music media publications. Again, they're all out there. You can go on most of the websites and you can go on the contact page and they're normally there. Subscribe to industry newsletters. So I actually find this helpful. Like the Industry Observer and the Music Network and Habit Music Company, they have a really good weekly insight about release campaigns. They just currently did this week's on Lil Nas, which was exciting. Is a really good piece. While you keep progressing, identify holes within the community and within your audience, because I always found that filling in gaps kind of like, it's like a little train and you're just like on the tracks and you don't want gaps there, so you fill them in. And I think once you really get to know your audience, you'll notice where them gaps are. And, you'll do that more by selling merch, engaging with local street press and businesses around you, and building up them partnerships and developing your audience that way. And like I've said 10 times in this presentation, over the years I found that co-writing is just so helpful to an artist, and I really do back collaboration more than anything. Again, like if you are that very independent songwriter, there are ways for you to collaborate. And then, it helps you build that team, and it helps you kind of point yourself in the right direction to work with the right people. What else have we got? So, your resources, MusicACT, it's right in front of you. If you've got a question, contact them. They're more than happy to help. If you're thinking management, don't contact, I would say I wouldn't recommend contacting the AAM regarding the fact that you want management. That's not what they're there for. What they're there for is to represent artist managers. So if you're thinking of becoming an artist manager, then that's why you'd use the AAM resource. There are Facebook groups and forums, again, mostly for industry workers. So if you're wanting to do servicing, not so for artists, but it's more kind of like industry questions. And yeah, I've kind of like put a link in for that. As Daniel said at the start, APRA AMCOS, again, they're there as a resource nationally, and there's kind of like specific people at APRA AMCOS that are helping with your state, so they can help you anything to do with writing, little bits and bobs of advocacy. Like I said before, industry newsletters are super helpful. They've kept me engaged and kind of in the loop about what's happening in all the tea. And most important thing, above everything else, especially now, you've got to look after your own mental health and well-being. I'm sure everybody's seen Supportact at the moment. They've got an incredible crisis relief grant. They've helped me so much in the past 18 months. Again, you do have to prove that you've been within the industry within 3 years, but if you can get a reference for that, Supportact are really there to help with financial aid. Great.
Thanks, Shannon. That was awesome. I've just got, I think we've got a couple of questions still, if you've still got time for us. First one is from Kim Yang. She asked, what's your tip for artists approaching bigger label artists for co-writing?
Can you say that again? Sorry, I was just.
Yeah. What's your tip for artists in approaching bigger labeled artists for co-writing opportunities?
I wouldn't. Maybe start with their management, contact their management, not their label, because their management is the next direct communication to the artist. So I would probably reach out to their management because it's a bit more personable. And kind of when you're reaching out, tell them why you think you'd be a good fit together as co-write. Like, why would it benefit their artist to write with you?
Nice one. We've got another one from Grant. He asks, is it common for a band member who is doing some songwriting to be the band manager, or should the roles be separated?
It's completely the discretion of the band and the way that you want to do things. Honestly, if you are going to have a manager in a band, do a band agreement. Just get something on paper, get the roles and responsibilities, even just in a spreadsheet somewhere so you can tick it off. Because, you know, we all know there's band drama all the time, and it always comes from somebody who's managing the band. And yeah, just get a band agreement drawn up. There are a lot of bands in Australia where they're self-managed, and it's normally somebody in the band. I don't think that the roles should be separated. I think that the roles should only be separated is when you want it to be.
That's good advice. I've got a question for you. We've talked a lot about musicians and artists in this kind of conversation, but I guess for you as someone who works in the industry more than as an artist, what are some of the breakthrough points that you think industry workers should be looking for? And I guess what are where do you go looking for those kind of breakthrough points when it's not strictly about you as an artist, it's about you as an industry worker?
I guess it's always good to, you know, have a job well done and a pat on the back. Like, it kind of, especially when you're working really hard with a range of artists. I guess one of the breakthrough points is when you're incredibly passionate about the artists that you work with, and you know, you have one of them moments when they're on a big stage and you're watching them play and you're just like, wow, like for me that's just the breakthrough moment. And you know, it's incredible, my time working with Canberra artists and seeing them on bigger stages and being able to nurture that. I think that's, you know, the reward that comes from it. And you know, when you know that you've worked hard and your values and everything are around you are right, and it keeps going when your artist is moving as well. You know, it's the next thing and then the next thing and then the next thing. And I guess it kind of comes back to that thing as well, is that even if there is rejection there, you just take that and then do the next thing.
Nice one.
Yeah, sorry, a bit of a broad answer.
No, it's good. It's good to know. We've got one more question from Natalie. She asks, if you haven't released any songs yet, would you recommend looking for a manager or a publisher? Or would you recommend releasing music first and then finding a team afterwards, after you make that first step?
That's a really good question. Personally, the way that I, you know, if it was a perfect world, I'd probably say if you want the full impact of the music that you're releasing, then probably work towards building your team doing that. But I know that also, like, if you release a song and it goes well, then you have figures to leverage on to build an influential team. But also, a lot of teams want to nurture something from the very beginning and they want to start that journey with you. So there's kind of like pros and cons to them both. But the way that I like to work with artists is normally at a very emerging level when they haven't quite released yet. And, you know, sometimes I've worked with artists where they have released songs and they've actually took them down from streaming services, and we've just kind of started again and kind of like, you know, built this image at a higher standard instead of, you know, kind of having, I'm not going to low quality things up on streaming services.
We might do one or two more questions after this. I just know that you're also very busy, Shannon. But this maybe penultimate question is from Ruth. She asks, how much is your visual image / branding important to be fine-tuned when you're releasing your music? Like how important is that visual side of the branding to the release?
I think it really depends on your listenership and your audience. If it's about building your audience, I think maybe that's a conversation about aesthetics and the kind of listeners and audience that you want. Are you thinking like more to building a team? Like how much does it mean to the team, or does it mean to your audience?
I guess just like in the contemporary music scene, it seems like a lot of the more successful artists have a established like look or brand around, like, you know, color scheme, or like all these things are kind of well thought out. So I'm just wondering how important that is to get right from the start, or whether there's a lot of room for like developing that as you go.
Yeah. I think it is dependent on the listeners. Like, for example, if you're wanting to get played on Triple J also want to book you for festivals, and it's for like 16 to 25-year-olds, like the youth thing, and that's where people pop and they think of the branding because it's cool and it's edgy and it's this and it's that. But I reckon that if you've got a loyal following and fan base who really appreciate your music, I don't think that the branding's super important. And I think once you've got a team around you as well, it'll be a lot more easier for them to navigate that. Because like I said at the beginning, it really does come down to the songs and to the music and the way that you engage your audience as well, like even from a live perspective. So I wouldn't, if it's something that you're worrying about, I wouldn't worry about it too much, and I'd spend a lot more time writing than focusing on the branding of it. Because it might organically come as well, you know, when people start to work with you a bit more, or even to yourself.
True. Nice one. All right. I think we've got, unless anyone else has any other questions today, I think this might be the last question. If you do have a question though, please pop it in the chat. This potentially last question comes from Joanne. She asks, we just released our second single and are working towards an EP. Do you recommend releasing songs as singles?
Again, if you're using Spotify as your main platform for streaming, then I'm just going to say yes. It's a singles world because of playlisting. You know, I'm working with artists at the moment and they're like, I want to release an album. I'm like, don't do it. Nobody listens to albums anymore. But again, it's to do with your listeners, because it like, look at the people and their behaviors. Like, you've got a full platform, Spotify for artists and Apple for artists, where you can actually look at the behaviors of your listeners, and you can find out if they're streaming your songs through algorithm, or if they're streaming your songs through editorial, or if they're going directly to your page. And if most of your listenership is typing in your name and listening to your music, then yeah, I'd say that you'd have some strength releasing an EP or album. But if they're listening to them another way, then I'd probably keep going with single releases, and then package it up as an EP. So release them all at once and then just like, bang, put some artwork on it.
Yeah, put a ribbon on it. Nice one. And last question. Last question. I'm calling it. How would you pitch yourself to other potential managers as an artist?
Well, the thing is with management is that most of the time managers approach artists, which is, you know, it's a disadvantage, especially for artists that haven't built that network yet. But just send them a song. Put your biggest win in there. If you haven't released anything yet, just be like, something that I find really helpful. And bearing in mind that I do manage like rock guitar bands and kind of like poppy stuff, is that they're like, I'm like so and so and so and so, and they put a like an artist reference in, and it just kind of helps me to know what to expect instead of just like, here's a demo link, like listen to it. Like there needs to be a bit more intention behind it.
Nice. Great advice. Thank you so much, Shannon.